Hello and welcome to the Roll and Reflect podcast where we bring you insights from behind the tabletop and beyond the box. I'm your host, Mark. Devin is away this week, but today we will be talking to Ryan Laukat from Red Raven Games. Welcome to the show, my friend. It's good to have you here.
Hey, thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So before we dive into all the fun stuff you're doing, let's get to our reflection question. A good friend of the show and a good buddy of mine, Fong, take it away.
The main man, Mark Street. I have a question for you. What has been the most rewarding part of your board game career so far? And how will it impact future projects for you as you continue your board game journey?
Wow, that's a great question, Fong. So what do you think, Ryan?
So, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is making Sleeping Gods actually work. Like, that it was a success. I think when I started on the project, it seemed like a big step up from anything I had done before.
Yeah.
And I also didn't really know how to make it work. Like, I knew I loved games, like video games that were like open world story narrative adventure games.
Me too, yeah.
And I had done some narrative games like Near and Far, Above and Below. But this one felt like definitely like it was going to stretch me. And I also I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, because I had been designing games around victory points for a long time. Sleeping Gods, stepping out of that where you don't have victory points, like where you don't have this like obvious goal that you're going toward. I was like, gosh, how do you make this work? Will people sit there? Will they get bored? Will they have motivation to keep playing? So it took actually a long time to figure out how to keep people sort of engaged with the game. And I did actually start out using victory points, which is kind of fun.
How did it work with victory points?
Right. I split the game into like these little sessions, and you had to get a certain amount of points to succeed. And yeah, it definitely didn't fit the what I was going for.
Sure.
I remember when it came out and people started playing it, when it got to backers, there were definitely some people that the game did not work for them. I remember at the time thinking like, yeah, I know some people are going to hate this, but this is what we made. This is the thing.
Yeah,
and
yeah, not every game is for everyone, right? So it's one of those things that everybody has kind of their preference and favorite. Like for me, it's big story driven, thematic, and cooperative style games. I love those type of games. So
yeah, some games work for some people, some don't work for other people. At first we were seeing like a lot of pushback, like people were really mad at the game, like, how dare this game be this way. But then I started to see more people enjoy it and kind of it found its audience.
It did. I love it. It's so good. I haven't played it for a while now because I am hip deep in prototype world. But
well, thank you.
I don't know that I have any one moment. I feel like maybe it's something that people say a lot, but for me, it's simply straight up the fact that I'm all over the place as a media guy. So I think just the friendships and people I've been able to meet and do amazing content with, and I think that's the big thing for me, and just kind of drives me to want to do more team ups with other folks. It's just, it adds so much fun and so much flavor to all the content that I'm doing. So I love it. And that's really the key thing for me, is that, and it's allowed me to travel all over the place and do amazing things with friends in Hollywood. And I got treated like the talent. It was phenomenal. So,
that's awesome.
Really fun stuff. So yeah, that's probably it for me.
The relationships, it's really all about the people. Playing the games, it's always about the people.
It is. And I would never have known you. That would have been terrible. So I'm very happy to be in this position and do this job. So, you become a good friend, so I appreciate it. So
thank you.
And you make amazing stuff. So, all right. So let's jump into the questions here. The first thing right out of the gate, we got to talk about Above and Below Haunted, because that's your new campaign that's up right now. And so just tell us more about it.
Yeah. So we decided to do this. I always wanted to do another Above and Below because it was one of our early hits. I actually tried to design a game, like another Above and Below game, a follow-up, for a long time. Mm-hmm. I have a bunch of prototypes. Nothing really caught on. Nothing really was really sticking. But the 10th anniversary was coming up, and so I started thinking again, okay, is there something I could explore here? And so, yes, I told this story recently, but we were in this cave. We were in southern Utah. We were hiking and we found this cave. It was a big old cave. It was like a big dragon cave, honestly. That's what it felt like.
Nice.
And we went inside it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was just feeling so inspired to do more cave exploration, like in Above and Below. And I thought, oh, this would be amazing. But I was thinking of new landscapes to put it in.
Yeah.
And one place that I haven't really explored much in any of my games is like a marshland.
Right.
And so I started thinking this and researching it. I found out that there's it's called a karst landscape, where there's like a ton of water, and it dissolves like the limestone and creates a lot of caves. So there can be a very wet landscape with like very wet caves.
Oh, neat.
I thought, oh, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
And the ghost thing kind of...
I love the ghost thing.
Yeah, it just kind of fit in. I thought, oh, it could be a haunted place. There was just so many opportunities to write stories. Like, that's what I'm looking for when I'm making a game with story. Like,
yes.
How many stories can we write here?
I can't wait to see more of them, because I got a small sampling, so I can't wait to see more of them. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And the book's it's like 95% complete.
Cool.
And I'm really I like a lot of the stories in there. It's a very unique compared to some of our other games. There's some quirky, fun stuff in there.
Oh yeah, just even from the samples that I had, there was some really quirky, fun stuff. And I love that you have that choose your own adventure element, because even in my preview video, I talk about that I loved as a kid choose your adventure books, and this totally puts me in that space. And is that something that you gravitated towards too? You just love that choose your adventure thing?
Oh yeah, I definitely read a lot of those as a kid.
They were so good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love that. It was very immersive. And gosh, another inspiration is probably like playing old adventure games. It's not quite the same, but there's so much text and puzzle solving and making choices and stuff.
What are some of the key new things? I mean, obviously we talked about ghosts, and I love with the ghosts that you actually have an action that you're going to banish the ghost, but you can contaminate one of your fellow players with one of the ghosts, which is awesome. So, but what other new elements to this version?
So there's now a stack of adventure cards, which is something from Sleeping Gods. When writing these stories, I'm always like, okay, it's so much fun when you can get a very unique outcome based on a choice you make.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can't do that for every choice in the game.
Sure.
But I thought this would be a great opportunity to just take that little thing from Sleeping Gods to give you sometimes a unique outcome. And sometimes it'll be like an event that affects all the players.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it'll just be like a character that just joins your village, or something you find, some weird thing, some effect that will affect you for the rest of the game. That's a thing I'm excited about.
And even though isn't it true in this version that even though when you go do the explore, you choose the easy or the more difficult path, if you fail, you still get to keep the cave cards so you can build in the below area, right?
It's not quite as punishing as the first game. Yeah.
Which I think folks will enjoy that for sure, because you're like, well, at least this happened even though I failed miserably.
Yeah. Maybe it'll help people take a few. I think that's the idea. I want people to take a few more risks.
Yes,
and
right, definitely. And I think that's what it does. It spurs you on to go, oh, I'm going to do the difficult one. Let's do it. You definitely push your luck there. I like that a lot. How about the spooky theme? Was that something you were like, whoa, let's lean into this? I mean, the artwork definitely conveys it.
It's hard to say exactly where that came from. I think part of it is when I was painting the cover, because one weird thing I do is I paint game covers very early in the process.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I use it as an anchor to guide me the whole time. So I painted that cover before I had written even one story for the game. I just put the ghosts in there. It's almost like they just fit right in there. I put the ghosts in, and I thought, oh gosh, this is just perfect.
Yeah.
There's so much to explore here. Now, ghosts have been, and like spirits and stuff, that's been a pretty standard part of the world of Arzium.
Yes.
Like, you do run into ghosts quite often in the other games.
Sure. But not like this, though.
But not quite like this. Yeah. Not as much as this.
Especially with the cool ghost tokens, the meeple tokens. They're so cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I like them. A lot of people on that campaign have been saying they look like penguins.
I suppose if you turn them a certain way, and now that you say that, I don't think I can unsee it.
I know, and I can't unsee it myself, actually. So I actually am going to adjust them a little bit.
Adjust them. Okay, that sounds good. Oh man, that's really interesting. I didn't even think of that. So how has been the response? I mean, it looks like the campaign is going gangbusters.
Really good. It's been really exciting first couple of days. I think crowdfunding is somewhat a challenge right now for publishers. I'm seeing it everywhere.
Yep.
Not that it's obviously it's still rolling along.
Sure.
It's still doing quite well, but you can see a little bit of a dip, I think
so too.
in crowdfunding. But so no, I mean,
and
considering that we're doing so good.
Yeah, and folks are really looking for finished games, right? They don't want to have a vague idea about something. Absolutely, one of the things that's causing that, I think. So not all the games look finished, right?
Yeah,
so,
and it's nice because this one we're actually further along any campaign I've ever run. So,
oh wow, that's good.
Like the game is really close to being able to send to the printer.
And you're on Gamefound this time, right?
Yes, Gamefound. Yeah, this is our third Gamefound project.
It is your third Gamefound, that's right. So do you like Gamefound more? I'm always curious.
I do, for a couple of reasons. I can't say we'll never go back to Kickstarter. Like,
sure.
Who knows?
It's still a viable option. Always, you got to keep your options open. So
Sure. But one reason I jumped to Gamefound is I like that the pledge manager is connected.
Oh yeah,
when we first jumped on board years ago. It was also because of they help with VAT stuff, and I also like that it feels like a more curated list. It's very board game focused.
Yeah.
And I really do like that. It feels like there's not quite as much noise on Gamefound.
This is true. I mean, it's definitely more focused for sure. So, but yeah, now it's just kind of a mainstay. It's like, oh, which one are you on? It used to be a thing like, oh, really? Where are you at? And I think that it's really gained so much more traction now that it just is part of the standard. But I'm always curious what folks think between the two. So,
and Kickstarter, I can't remember quite how many we did. More than 15.
Yep.
Since 2011.
Yeah.
But and we wouldn't be here without Kickstarter. Definitely, I'm grateful that we were able to use Kickstarter to make our company work.
Yeah. So what is your favorite aspect about Haunted above, all the things you put into it, all the time? What is the thing that you're like, wow, I really like that?
I think I just love the feel of the place. Like, I love the look of everything. I love like the buildings that are on stilts.
Yes, me too.
And that there are boats,
Yeah, boats. That's a really cool aspect for sure.
Yeah, and just like that, it's so watery and kind of rainy and very green and lush, and
yeah,
I think all that together. I like the location.
Yep. And the artwork and the theme all plays so nicely. I even say it in my preview that I like this version better than the original. So I wouldn't say it replaces it, but it's definitely one I would pick out of the shelf first between the two. With all that in mind, let's jump in and say, because you're so well known for doing design and illustrations, how do you balance the creative process between game mechanics and the art direction?
They've always been very closely connected for me. Even as a kid, doing this as a hobby since I was around 11.
Nice.
Yeah, 11, 12. I would come up with a game idea, but start sketching is almost at the exact same time. And over time, it's been very much connected for me. It's the same thing. It's in a lot of ways, I'm doing the same thing I did when I was 12. I'd sit there, come up with a game idea, sketch it all out, think of a place I wanted to visit or a feeling I wanted to feel, and then start working on mechanics that would help me visit that place. Even now I'm thinking of new prototypes I'm working on. The visual is always so early. I'm thinking visually almost as much as mechanically.
So many games that have this expansive, immersive experience. What would you say is the biggest challenge in designing games that combine both exploration and deep narrative?
One of the biggest challenges is obviously making the stories feel like they are connected to the mechanics.
Yes.
That's a big thing that's important to me. When people read the story, I want it so that if they skipped the story, it would make a difference. Let's say somebody just doesn't want to read it, and they just skip to the end, it would make a difference if they didn't actually pay attention to some of the details in
Especially
that
when
story.
you have to choose a path in some of these.
Yeah, definitely. So putting in clues, making the choices interesting. I think writing these big books, it can be a challenge as you go through, especially near the end, to come up with engaging choices, engaging stories that you haven't already done, something new, but that works mechanically too.
I think you do such an amazing job making it all feel like it's not just an add-on to the game or flavor text. It actually is involved in everything you're doing in the game, which I appreciate because I love narrative in games. Through all your games and your designer artists, how do you find inspiration for your worlds that you create and the characters in the games?
I definitely am inspired by the place I live. I live in Utah.
Okay.
And, I live right by the mountains, but there's a lot, there's deserts here, forests,
Sure.
mountains. I go into nature and I'm inspired that way. And for the characters, it's hard to say. I mean, I consume so much media. I love video games. I love books and comics. I think there's a little bit of everything that kind of influences that. I will say Studio Ghibli is definitely a big influencer for me. I think people know that.
So.
They can kind of see it.
Everything they do.
So, yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
I watch those movies a lot.
Yeah, one of my favorite things with those movies is that I turned my daughter onto them when she was young, and now she's right there with me. Are we gonna go? Like, if it's one of those Cine Arts things, like showing it at the theater or something.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we're going. You build a reputation creating games with rich worlds and deep lore. How do you keep your creative ideas fresh across multiple games and different universes that you've created?
That can be a challenge. One of the big things I do is I try to jump around to really different places. Sleeping God's Distant Skies, which is a very pulp adventure horror. When I say horror, obviously this is our Red Raven Games horror, but there's some horror elements in there for sure.
Yeah.
It's inspired definitely by Indiana Jones and all that kind of stuff.
Totally get that vibe for sure.
Yeah. And when we were done with that, it was like, okay, I got to do something different. I can't do this something too similar again, which is why we jumped to Creature Caravan, which has a totally different art style.
Very different, yeah.
It's very colorful and cartoony and quirky.
Yep.
And light. So that can help to jump to a very obviously different project.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like you got to let the well for one thing refill before you go back to it.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you have a particular favorite world or game that you've designed, and why does it stand out to you?
I think it's hard to have a favorite. There's two worlds for the big worlds for Red Raven Games. There's Arzium, which is a more whimsical, above and below. That's the above and below world.
Yep.
And then there's the Wandering World. That's Sleeping Gods.
Yep.
But actually, one of my older games, The Ancient World, is technically also in that setting, just in a very ancient time. I think my favorite game is still Sleeping Gods. I just love all the surprise and
I did too.
The weird stuff in it, and I haven't revisited it for a while, but
yeah. Now I want to go back and replay again. It's been a little while for me too for playing. Yeah. And again, how much you incorporate just your artwork into the whole theme and design. Again, none of it ever feels tacked on. I love that you have that all fully integrated and chained together so well. You have your own games, but what about other games? You have some favorites that you like to play. Like for me and my family, one of our other favorites is Return to Dark Tower. We played so much of that.
Oh yeah. I haven't played that one, but it looks right up my alley.
Yeah,
it's weird. I have this love for Knizia style old school Euros.
I get it. Yeah.
Really love stuff that's not too heavy, but is really clean and power grid.
Yes.
Lost Cities. I love those games.
Especially Lost Cities. Oh man.
I introduced that to my siblings recently, and
nice.
Oh my gosh, they can't stop playing it.
Yeah, it's one of the games you can pull out and engage non-gamers pretty easily.
Oh yeah.
And I take it to family events all the time. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But big thematic games really speak to me too.
Yes.
I love Cthulhu Death May Die, actually,
Yeah,
quite
it's
a
really.
bit.
I haven't played it for a while again, but I love that game.
What I love about it is it's just so much story in it. The setting is just so immersive,
It is.
but it's not too complex. It doesn't bog you down too much with too many rules.
Right.
So I really like that, and I like games like that.
Yeah, that's right up my alley too. I'm all about the experience over like some complex chain of rules.
Oh yeah.
I'm much more in tune with that, and games where you have to truly work together and it's full conversation. No one ever feels like there's downtime. You're just engaged all the time. So
Oh yeah.
that's right in my alley for sure. And now, so we've talked about balancing, design and mechanics and things. How about how do you ensure that your strategy within the game and the story itself, one does not overshadow the other during the development process?
Yeah, it depends on the type of game.
Sure.
With Creature Caravan, obviously there's no narrative book.
Right.
So it is a lot about the mechanics, but it's also just about the feel of the game. Like, we want this to be a quick, fast-playing game where we're all together, but it's, I think in the case of, it's tough in Above and Below, for example, because that's where it really gets challenging because it's a competitive game.
It is.
That's the difference between Sleeping Gods
Yep.
and the blank and blank games.
Yeah.
Like all the Now or Never, Near and Far,
Sure.
Above and Below. Those are competitive Euro games, which is a genre. It's a competitive Euro game with a storybook. I mean, it's really hard to find a lot of games
That
in
do that.
specific
Very little.
slot. So it can be hard. It's like you've got to make sure that the story doesn't get in the way of the game, because people are there to play the game. They're not just there to play the story.
Right.
So keeping things somewhat short is important. Although some of these stories can go long. I think I try to balance it where we have short ones and then we have longer ones.
Yeah, even in the samples you sent me for Haunted, you have some of that.
But it can be really tough to keep things short.
Yes.
I
can
remember
imagine.
writing, I'm like, okay, it's only going to be one sentence, and 3 paragraphs later, it's like, oh, okay, we went too far.
We need to pare this down. So in designing your games and all that you worked through, what are some that literally ended up completely different from what your initial vision was for the game? And what were like some of the key turning points in that development?
Well, I did mention Sleeping Gods. That one did change quite dramatically throughout. We dumped victory points. I figured out that just giving people quests and stories was kind of enough to just motivate you to keep playing and get to the end. Obviously, survival and making choices was important, but yeah, that one changed a lot. In fact, okay, I'll describe one thing that changed.
Yeah.
Combat was very different. So there was one point where you had a big ship, and all the shipboard was huge. And all the rooms were big, and you had characters, you would put them in the rooms. And your crew was like 18 people. So you had like 18 named characters, and you would like assign them to different rooms. And then if you ever got attacked, there were like standees, like monster standees, and you would put them in the rooms.
Okay.
And you would move them around in the different rooms. They would attack each other, and you have to play cards to like move the crew to like defend themselves. It sounds amazing. But it was really bogged down. I mean,
Yeah, I have to wonder if it sounds really cool, but man, I could see that just taking a long time to get through.
Yeah, and every time you went exploring, you would have to pick crew from off the rooms and put them on like an exploration board. So you would pick like, oh, okay, we're gonna take these 6 this time. You'd put them on the board, and man, just doing that over and over again, just it was too much. So, a lot of my games changed dramatically throughout development, usually.
So we talked a little bit about what your favorite worlds were, but what about favorite art in your games? Do you have a piece of art or a series that you're really, really proud of?
It's hard to pick favorites. I think...
Yes. Give me your top 3.
Okay, so here's my top 3 that I like the most.
Okay.
Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like it's some of my best work. especially in the cards. Like if you dig into the game, you get all some of those cards out. I think it's some of my best artwork.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. It's so
yeah.
good.
Oh, thank you. I think next I'll pick Now or Never. It's a little weird. It's a little different looking.
Very different, yeah.
Yeah. It's got some very bold colors. Like that cover's just like that red. It's like super red.
Super red. It pops big time.
Yeah, the map. I love the setting. And the third is probably... Gosh, I think it's Creature Caravan.
Oh, really? Any particular thing within Creature Caravan?
I love I really love line art. Line art with like a watercolor look to it. I really love Mobius. He's one of my favorite artists.
Yeah, definitely. And
I know Creature Caravan doesn't look exactly Mobius, but it's definitely inspired by that general look.
Yeah.
There are especially some cards in there with some like weird sky colors and stuff like that, and that's definitely inspired by Mobius. And I wanted to get more into that. Now the issue is doing that style actually takes it's kind of tedious. It takes longer. It's weird that it can take longer than my other like Above and Below style.
Yeah.
So I can't do it for every game.
Sure.
But I do like how it looks.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that kind of leads me into my next question is that, so who are some artists and artwork that inspires you for your games, and not necessarily in the board game world, but just across everything?
Yeah, definitely Mobius, Wyeth paintings from the Brandywine School of Illustration.
Yeah, right.
I love how those look.
Yeah.
And
I know all that. I went to the Colorado Institute of Art for photography, but they had art classes we did, so I know all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's beautiful work.
Yeah.
I just love the general style and the colors. And there's something about them that's just very like romantic, sort of. I don't know, like it's a very romantic style.
Sure.
You know, it's not showing a lot of ugliness. It's like Miyazaki's work.
Yes.
I often look at I have the Nausicaa.
Okay, well, looking forward, what excites you about the future of board game design, and are there any new trends you're particularly interested in exploring?
So I want to do another storybook game. I'm always trying to go in new directions with the narrative games. I feel like I want to do another big narrative game, but maybe not in the exact same way as Sleeping Gods.
Yeah.
I like it because it really challenges my brain. It's almost like making a movie. You know, you're like, okay, we got to make the characters. We got to come up with the production design. We've got to, there's a story. We have to come up with the story, but then we have to come up with the mechanics. I love all that together. It's really fun and a big challenge to like work on all of that at the same time.
Because you're so heavily into that that type of design and just making worlds. What are your feelings around like apps that guide folks in their board games in the narrative?
Maybe a controversial opinion.
Oh no, that's good.
You could guess by seeing that we don't have many apps.
Right.
I don't love game apps that are part of the game.
Yeah, I get it.
I think with Foreteller, where you're having a narration, I think that's totally great, and that totally I like that. But I think if the app, if you have to spend too much time in an app when you're playing a game, I tend to feel like I think I would rather play a video game.
Yeah, it pulls you out, definitely. I get it.
Yeah, I've played some games where it works.
Sure.
But I have to confess that after a certain amount of time, I find it tedious to have to spend too much time in the app.
Yeah, and I think for me, when folks have to read from a storybook, it keeps everybody engaged at the table, right? And the big advantage to having apps, the only one I can see is that you could have nice voice acting and character driven things, but that's such a small part of it that I think the story still conveys, even if you're just people reading across the table. So,
sure.
But yeah, I can see why folks try to do some of that. Return to Dark Tower, that is essential to have an app.
Oh yeah. And I think some games really work well with the app, and I especially do like when there's voice recording. I like reading. I like the reading because that really does keep people engaged, but I totally can enjoy the voice recording too.
Yeah.
But I think if too many mechanics are just locked behind an iPad, I think that's where I think that's where it kind of pulls me out a little bit.
Yep, there's been some in the past, like I think XCOM, that really pulled me out of the game and such. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a really interesting balance. If you can get that balance right, I think it works well. But it's often not done well. That's the main questions I have for you, Ryan. Thanks for joining us. Now we're going to move over to our segment called The Beyond. This is where we're going to talk about something. Maybe it is inside the board game industry, but it doesn't have to be. It's something that you've done recently or excited about seeing or something along those lines. So what do you have that you're excited about, Ryan?
Okay, so recently, this is kind of a weird thing, but I found this movie called Hundreds of Beavers. Have you heard of this movie?
I have heard of this movie.
Okay. And so I saw a few clips. Now, I haven't seen the whole movie. I started watching it last night. And it just, I like kind of quirky movies.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a quirky movie.
Yeah, this one, I was like, whoa, I have not seen anything like this
ever.
And
I've only seen the trailer, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it just had me like laughing so hard, like I was crying. I was laughing so hard.
That's awesome.
You know,
and I'll have to check it out.
I tend to like old movies.
Yeah.
My family kind of makes fun of me because anytime I personally choose a movie, it's usually like a pre-2000s movie.
Yeah.
I'm like picking movies from the 70s or the 80s or something.
Yeah. Well, I do the same thing a lot.
There's something about this that was really different than everything that's out right now. And
so mine is that, they announced they were going to do a live action Voltron. And I've always been a fan of Voltron, big from a kid. I used to get up like, you could only see it when I was a kid. You had to get up like super early, like 5:30 to see it. On whatever channel, like PBS or whatever.
Yeah,
I was all about that. So I was guarded optimism for a live action version. But then they announced that Henry Cavill had joined the cast, and now my eyebrows are up, and I'm like, ooh,
wow.
Yeah, I'll pretty much anything with him in it, I'll probably see.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean I know he was involved in he's involved in the Warhammer thing that's coming out,
and he's a true fan with this stuff. So
yeah.
Much like The Witcher, he left because they weren't doing things that they should be doing with the story. And if he's joining Voltron, then he's got to have a good sense of that they're doing right by the story. So
right,
hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's definitely like a vote of confidence. Like, it'll probably be good.
Yep.
I haven't seen a ton of Voltron. I did see the new
on Netflix.
show.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah, very good.
Yep. I even watched the vehicle version of Voltron. As a
nice.
Kid. Yeah. So all the Voltrons. Of course, the Lions ends up being the favorite, but I'm all about, and I'm always like, just use the sword first.
Yeah.
But still, and I think they make fun of that in the new show at one point. I was like, yes.
That's like my kids said that when we watched Pacific Rim the other day.
Yes.
They're like, come on, use the sword first.
Use the sword first. I remember watching the trailer for Pacific Rim, right? And I was like, robots, yeah, I'm pretty interested. But then in the trailer, when he picks up the ship, the tanker, he uses it as a weapon. I'm like, I'm in. Totally.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. I love that over the top, hang my brain at the door movies kind of stuff.
I'm
all about it. I'm looking forward to all those things. I'm going to check out that movie for sure. Thanks again for joining us today. I really appreciate it. It was so good to have you here. And I hope your campaign just continues to get bigger and bigger. Any other final words about Haunted?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No, just I'm excited about this and really pleased with how the crowdfunding has gone so far. What's nice is I think this will be delivered faster than our usual campaigns.
Sounds like you're all over it at the moment. So
yeah, so it's been really fun to revisit the game. All
right, folks. Well, if you like this show, definitely subscribe to us on YouTube, the Roll and Reflect channel. Go and all the places you listen to podcasts. We're there as well. Check us out. You follow us the show on social media, Roll and Reflect Podcast. And special shout outs to Fong for the reflection question, and for Laura for all the timestamps and everything she does, and to all of you, the high rollers. Thanks for joining us and listening. Looking forward to all the next games that you're going to be working on, Ryan. So this is a good time.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it was
You bet.
fun.
All right, folks, until next time, may your games be legendary and your rolls be epic.